fight between two Kentucky teens ended with one girl dead and the other in jail during the summer of 2017, when 19-year-old Tiffany James fatally stabbed Madison Branch outside a Speedway gas station in Louisville. Branch, who was 5 years younger than her killer, could be seen punching James and pulling her hair in cell phone footage of the altercation. The video also showed the moment James pulled a knife out of her purse and stabbed Branch, who was pronounced dead at a nearby hospital several hours later. James admitted to the stabbing and was arrested at the scene on suspicion of murder. According to police, people on both sides of the fight accused the other of bullying. This allegation was supported by James's family, who said that they had received death threats in the days following the deadly disagreement. Branch's mother, Michelle, levied similar accusations against James while arguing that there was no reason to stab such a young victim in the first place. During the early stages of the case, a law enforcement spokesperson said that investigators would weigh whether the use of force was justified while considering other factors relevant to the case. The case against James ultimately went to trial, and in October 2018, a jury was tasked with determining whether she was guilty of murder, manslaughter, a lesser charge, or no charges. Branch's mother testified during the proceedings, and while she agreed that bullying was the primary cause of the fatal fight, she stood by her belief that her daughter was not the bully. After deliberating for just a handful of hours, the jury found James guilty of reckless homicide. They recommended a 5-year prison sentence, but the judge sentenced James to 5 years of probation with the requirement to serve part of her term on house arrest. While imposing the punishment, he explained that he spared James from prison time because he did not believe she was a danger to the public. The judge also expressed his dismay over the fact that a stabbing had occurred between two teenage girls while adults stood by and watched, suggesting a possible belief that someone should have intervened. Number 21. Karon Council. In February of 2018, 18-year-old Karon Council was arrested in Pompano Beach, Florida for the murder of a boy barely more than half his age in Monmouth County, New Jersey. The victims, Giovanni Banosh Marino and his 38-year-old mother, Lilia Marino, were shot inside their Asbury Park home just days earlier. Lilia survived her injuries, but her son wasn't so lucky. The pair were not the intended targets of the shooting, which was carried out by counsel with the participation of a younger co-defendant, Jardell Birch. Investigators identified Council as the triggerman, while concluding that Birch played a key role in Giovanni's murder. Described in news articles as a teen robber, Birch was initially charged with murder, conspiracy to commit murder, aggravated assault, unlawful possession of a weapon, and possession of a weapon for an unlawful purpose. Council's arrest in South Florida came several days later and was followed by charges of murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and unlawful possession of a weapon. According to prosecutors, Council targeted the residence in hopes of scaring a man who had stabbed him during a previous altercation. Donned in masks, he and Birch cased the victim's home until they knew their intended target was inside. Council proceeded to remove a gun that was hidden in some nearby bushes and fired 5 shots at a man standing in the doorway, who managed to escape the gunfire uninjured. One of the bullets struck Lilia in the leg, while the other killed little Giovanni, who was hiding under his bed. In late 2018, Council and Birch each pleaded guilty to aggravated manslaughter and a gun charge. Birch received a 10-year prison term, while Council was sentenced to 25 years, and they are both required to serve at least 85% of their punishment before becoming eligible for release. Council will become eligible for parole in 2039 after serving roughly 20 years. Council tearfully and profusely apologized at his sentencing, while insisting that he never meant to kill Giovanni, but his words of remorse had little to no effect on the victim's heartbroken mother, who urged the judge to impose a stiff sentence and requested psychological services for family members who were traumatized by her son's violent death. Number 20. Cassidy Goodson. In late 2012, a Lakeland, Florida high schooler named Cassidy Goodson was charged with first-degree murder for the murder of her newborn child. Terrified by the prospect of being a teen mom and destroying her reputation as an overachiever, Goodson had gone to great lengths to conceal her pregnancy. In addition to wearing baggy clothes, she denied the suspicions of others, including her mother Teresa and other relatives. Cassidy also hid the pregnancy from the child's father, whom she had broken up with prior to discovering that she was expecting. Teresa had noticed her petite daughter's rapid weight gain, and she had even questioned Cassidy directly on more than one occasion. But Cassidy insisted she wasn't pregnant, and Teresa accepted the teen's denial as fact after allowing her to take a pregnancy test alone and seeing negative results. While cleaning her daughter's room in September of 2012, Teresa noticed a foul odor that was impossible to ignore. Packed inside a shoebox with bloody towels and clothing, she found the full-term remains of the newborn that Cassidy had killed after secretly giving birth in the bathroom of their home 5 days earlier. During police questioning, Cassidy described in detail how she had strangled her perfectly healthy son to death before washing up and packing his 9.5-pound body away. When questioned about her motive, she said she didn't want to get in trouble or for her relationships with her mother and other family members to change. Following an autopsy, Polk County authorities charged Cassidy with first-degree murder and aggravated child abuse. She could have faced decades behind bars but was sentenced to a minimum of 18 months at a maximum security facility for juvenile offenders after pleading guilty to a reduced manslaughter charge. While handing down the punishment, the judge explained that he came to the decision based on his belief that Cassidy's actions, however horrible they may have been, were not premeditated. Number 19. Amariyona Hall. An entire Mississippi community was shocked in January of 2019 when a pair of siblings were accused of murdering their mother inside the family's Magnolia home. Teenager Amariyona Hall and her preteen sister denied fatally shooting and stabbing 32-year-old Erica Hall, claiming that they were at an aunt's house when the crime occurred. Additionally, Amariyona described her home life as abusive, even though local authorities had never received any complaints of that nature. Prosecutors didn't believe the girls' alibi or that they were being mistreated and arrested them both for murder. Family members denied that they were at a relative's house on the night of the murder, and Erica Hall's sister, Ebony, claimed that the sisters had tried to run their mother over with a car just days before their mother was killed. According to authorities, both girls confessed to killing Erica and planning her murder ahead of time during police questioning. They reportedly told investigators that they lured their mother out of her bedroom by faking a knock at the door. 2 months after the sisters' arrest, an attorney representing the young defendants told local news station WXII that the defense's case would be based on a self-defense theory. Due to her age and Mississippi's laws, Amariyona was automatically charged as an adult while her sister was sent to juvenile court. The girls were released on bond, and more than 6 years later, the case is still ongoing with no imminent end in sight. Amariyona's trial was originally scheduled to take place in 2021, but it has yet to occur due to repeated delays. In November 2024, another one of Erica's daughters, Kamyjah Hall, told local station WLBT that she's made peace with whatever the outcome may be and that she's ready to get the case over with. She described the situation as painful on both sides due to the loss of both her mother and her 2 sisters, who were all very close at one time. The trial's postponements have also taken a toll on other family members who are eager to obtain justice for Erica. Reporters contacted the court in an attempt to find out when Amariyona's trial will take place, but have not followed up with any new information, and the case appears to remain at a standstill. Number 18. Mauricio Johnson. 16-year-old Shelley Moon, her mother, 40-year-old Margaret Moon, and Margaret's boyfriend, 40-year-old Nicky Metcalf, were murdered at their home on the Runnerville Rancheria Reservation in Humboldt County, California on February 9th, 2024. According to an arrest warrant, 18-year-old Mauricio Johnson shot all 3 victims in the head after Margaret Moon arrived home to find Shelley, Johnson, and a group of teenagers drinking alcohol. She got upset and several of the visitors left, but when Metcalf entered Shelley's bedroom at 4 o'clock in the morning, he found Johnson on top of the young woman. He hit Johnson, who then took a gun out of his backpack and shot Metcalf, Shelley, and Margaret. Johnson later told police that he killed Shelley and Margaret to eliminate them as witnesses to Metcalf's murder. Law enforcement was called to the scene several hours later after Shelley's younger sister discovered the bloody crime scene and dialed 911. Shelley and Metcalf died at the scene, and Margaret succumbed to her injuries at a hospital later that day. By the time officers responded to the home, Johnson had gone on the run. His mother, Melissa Johnson, and Melissa's boyfriend, Von Keener, had also fled the area. Police managed to get in touch with Mauricio's brother, Damon Johnson, who said that Mauricio had arrived home in a panic and covered in blood. He reportedly admitted to shooting someone after Metcalf got tough on him. 2 days after the triple homicide, investigators tracked Mauricio, Melissa, and Keener to Tooele County, Utah, where they were seen driving in 2 separate vehicles. Melissa was driving one of the cars and pulled over without hesitation, while Mauricio and Keener fled until police disabled their vehicle using spike strips. Mauricio was extradited to California, and in October 2021 he pleaded guilty to 3 counts of murder along with the special circumstances of using a firearm. He was sentenced to 150 years in prison, but due to his young age at the time of the crime, he'll become eligible for parole after serving 25 years. From that point moving forward, he'll have an opportunity to see the parole board every 5 years until they grant his release. The Humboldt County District Attorney's Office said that it agreed to the deal because of Johnson's potential to undergo a positive transformation during his time in prison. Prosecutors decided to move forward with the deal after consulting with the victim's friends and family, who reportedly had mixed feelings on whether the plea deal was appropriate or if the case would have been better off going to trial. Number 17. Sarah Barr. Shortly after 11 p.m. on November 16, 2020, sheriff's deputies in Beaufort County, South Carolina, responded to a report of shots fired in Bluffton. Upon arriving at the scene, they found 45-year-old software engineer and father of two, Timothy Milliken, dead in his home from multiple gunshot wounds. 3 days after Milliken's murder, police arrested 26-year-old Devontae White, 22-year-old Malik White, and 22-year-old Jamal Coakley Jr. outside Atlanta in connection with the case. A fourth suspect, 17-year-old Sarah Barr, was arrested the following day on suspicion of murder, armed robbery, and kidnapping. According to court documents, Milliken had responded to an escorting ad posted by Barr with the expectation that he would pay for her services. Unaware that he was being targeted in a robbery, he met Barr and Devontae White outside his gated community, then rode with them to his house while Coakley and Malik White hid in the vehicle's trunk. Surveillance video showed Devontae grabbing Milliken from behind while claiming to be a police officer. He claimed he was arresting the victim for soliciting prostitution, and the group of thieves forced Milliken into his home. Milliken tried to push Devontae out of the house and was fatally shot during the struggle that ensued. The suspects fled the scene immediately after shots were fired. Records show that Barr was convicted of attempted armed robbery and sentenced to 5 years in prison. Malik White was convicted of the same crime and is serving a 15-year sentence, while Jamal Coakley received a 10-year term for the charge. Devontae White was the only defendant to be convicted of murder and is serving a 40-year sentence for his crimes. Number 16. Cartisha, Cashion, and Otha Brown. Adrian McDougal's wasn't even a teenager when he was killed in a drive-by shooting along a Jackson, Mississippi sidewalk in late May of 2022. His older brother, Ontario McDougal's, was also shot but survived his injuries. The first suspect that police arrested was later released without charges after his alibi checked out. Following further investigation, authorities charged 18-year-old Otha Brown, 19-year-old Cartisha Cashion, and 20-year-old Maurice Collins with murder, aggravated assault and drive-by shooting. In September 2023, roughly 16 months after the shooting, Otha Brown pleaded guilty as charged. He was sentenced to 35 years in prison with 10 years suspended for the murder charge, 25 years for the drive-by shooting, and 20 years for aggravated assault. Records list a tentative release date of May 2047, at which point he'll be in his early 40s. The cases against Cartisha Cashion and Maurice Collins appear to be ongoing. Number 15. Chance Guthrie. Chance Guthrie of Louisville, Kentucky, was barely old enough to attend high school when he killed a boy the same age named Darren Thiel in the St. Denis neighborhood on April 14, 2021. According to reports, Guthrie shot Thiel in the back of the head following an argument. Witnesses later told police that the shooting occurred among a group of 6 boys and that 5 of them ran in opposite directions after the gunfire rang out, leaving Thiel behind to die on someone's lawn. Thiel succumbed to his injuries after being rushed to the hospital in critical condition. 5 months later, Guthrie was charged with his murder. Throughout the course of his court proceedings, the young defendant was released from custody on home detention, much to the dismay of the victim's family. During that time, Guthrie was bound by strict rules, including a requirement to continue receiving an education. But this provided little comfort to Thiel's loved ones, who believed that the defendant belonged behind bars regardless of his age. Prosecutors announced relatively early on in the case that they planned to try Guthrie as an adult. But to some, the 6.5-year juvenile detention term that the judge imposed did not seem to reflect adult-level accountability. As Guthrie's 18th birthday approached in March of 2025, news reports revealed that he would be moved to an adult facility in the near future. He has already become eligible for probation, which the judge denied, and could be released from custody by the end of 2025. Number 14. Eduardo Bonilla-Lopez. During the summer of 2021, 18-year-old Oklahoma City resident Eduardo Bonilla-Lopez FaceTimed a witness and asked for help disposing of the body of a young woman he had just shot. The victim, 17-year-old Haley Gonzalez, could be seen bleeding from a head wound in the passenger seat of the killer's car. Instead of helping Bonilla-Lopez, the witness encouraged him to take Gonzalez to the hospital, but he refused, stating his desire to avoid going to prison. A short while later, Bonilla-Lopez called the witness again and said he had taken care of the body. By then, the witness had contacted law enforcement, and any attempts Bonilla-Lopez may have made to cover his tracks quickly fell apart. During questioning, the young man admitted that Gonzalez was still alive, albeit barely, when he FaceTimed the witness. He also reportedly confessed to dumping the victim's body at an undisclosed location and was charged with murder and kidnapping. Gonzalez had vanished after going to a 4th of July party. Following the discovery of her remains, authorities charged 2 additional suspects, 23-year-old Lilian Bonilla and 41-year-old Vidal Bonilla, in connection with the case. Records show that Bonilla-Lopez is serving prison time for first-degree murder, which will be followed by lifetime supervision if and when he's released. Lilian and Vidal Bonilla were each convicted of 2 counts of felony accessory and are serving 18-year sentences, with part to be served in prison while the remainder will be served on probation. Number 13. Estes Anderson. 27-year-old Larry Thorne was gunned down behind a Memphis, Tennessee church in January of 2023. Police were called to the scene at around 7 o'clock in the morning after a neighbor discovered the deceased young man, who had worked as a secretary for the Memphis-Shelby County School District. While investigating the case, detectives learned that Thorne had been last seen alive at the crime scene 6 hours earlier, while sitting in a car with an unknown individual. At around 1:30 a.m., a flash of light could be seen inside the vehicle. Moments later, the suspected killer fled on foot, leaving Thorne behind in the car with a fatal gunshot wound to the eye. About an hour and a half later, at around 3 o'clock in the morning, another car rolled up to the scene. 2 suspects got out and removed Thorne's body from the vehicle it had been left in, then set his remains ablaze. There were no immediate arrests in the case, leaving Thorne's family wondering if justice would ever be served. Finally, in October of 2024, authorities announced the arrest of a local high school student named Estes Anderson on charges of second-degree murder and abuse of a corpse. Investigators identified Anderson as a suspect based on DNA evidence from fingernail scrapings and photos that were found in Thorne's phone. The teen is being charged as an adult, despite his mother's insistence that he did not kill Thorne, who was his assigned mentor at school. Anderson is currently in custody with bond set at $125,000. The case will go before a grand jury who will be tasked with deciding whether the court should move forward with charges against the young defendant. During a previous court hearing, Anderson's public defender, Joseph Taggart, depicted his client as a misguided youth who grew up on the street and in the complete absence of positive influences. The attorney stated that Anderson's behavior went unchecked while in the care of his mother, who happens to be his primary guardian, and that he had missed nearly 70 days of school in 1 year due to the lack of guidance in his life. The outcome of the case remains to be seen. Number 12. Joshua Robinson. 19-year-old Zacchaeus Selby survived the 2021 Timberview High School shooting in Arlington, Texas, only to lose his life in early 2025 when attempting to sell a gun to a fellow teen. According to news reports, 17-year-old Joshua Robinson had contacted Selby with an interest in buying the weapon after learning that Selby sold guns on social media. The two met at an apartment complex in mid-January, but an argument broke out during the transaction. During the disagreement, Robinson shot Selby, who died from his injuries at a nearby hospital. Records show that Robinson is currently being held at the Tarrant County Jail on a murder charge with bond set at $250,000. Just 4 years prior to the deadly altercation between Selby and Robinson, Selby had been shot 7 times by his classmate, Timothy George Simpkins, during a fistfight in their second-period classroom. All 3 gunshot victims survived, and Simpkins is currently serving a 12-year prison sentence for attempted capital murder. Number 11. Reed Gelinsky. A young Wisconsin man is being charged as an adult with first-degree intentional homicide after prosecutors say he murdered his own mother and sent photos of her deceased body to appear on Snapchat. According to court documents, Reed Gelinsky of Racine County was inspired by the Menendez brothers to kill Suzanne Gelinsky, who was found dead at the family's Racine County home in early March of 2025 after Reed's alarmed friend alerted law enforcement to the graphic Snapchat images. Upon arriving at the residence, officers encountered Reed, who reportedly dropped a bloody knife on the ground on the front stoop and admitted to killing Suzanne. He had bludgeoned and stabbed his mother in the front entryway after caving to violent urges that he said he had been experiencing for some time in his efforts to find relief from his sinister compulsions. Reed had taken some of his brother's prescription anxiety medication in the weeks leading up to Suzanne's death, but it had worsened his symptoms and he decided to give in to temptation after watching a documentary documentary about Eric and Lyle Menendez, who were convicted in the gruesome 1989 murders of their parents. During his conversation with investigators, Reed explained that he initially planned to attack his father, but that the plot fell through when he was unable to find the right weapon. So he lured his mother into the room by asking for help searching for his medication and bludgeoned her in the head with a dumbbell. He then stabbed Suzanne to death while she pleaded for her life. Following his arrest, Reed was booked into Racine County Jail in lieu of a $1 million bond. He could face a life sentence if convicted as charged. Number 10. Joseph Joshua Harris. A baby-faced teen recently landed on the Texas Department of Public Safety's 10 most wanted fugitives list after an attempted robbery gone wrong resulted in a young man's death. 18-year-old Joseph Joshua Harris and 3 other suspects are accused of capital murder for the fatal shooting of 20-year-old Hayden Lee Holt, who was killed in Selma in February of 2025. Just days after the incident, 17-year-olds Robert Monreal, Dorian Camarillo, and Eric Cepeda were arrested for their alleged roles in the crime. According to police, the 3 suspects had planned to steal Harris's gun, but the attempt went awry, leading to an exchange of gunfire between the parties. At least 30 shots were fired during the altercation, and Holt was fatally struck by one of the bullets while sitting in a car with Monreal, Camarillo, and Cepeda. He was unarmed at the time and did not appear to play an active role in the botched robbery, which led to his death. Harris is the only suspect who remains at large, and a cash reward of up to $3,000 is being offered. In exchange for information leading to his capture, he has an extensive criminal history, which includes previous charges for gun theft, unauthorized use of a motor vehicle, evading arrest or detention, burglarizing vehicles, engaging in organized criminal activity, and unlawful carrying of a weapon. Number 9. Antonio Reyes. 6 innocent Chicago residents, including several children, were murdered in broad daylight by a serial killer over a 9-month period in 2020. The victims were all gunned down on the city's southwest side while engaging in harmless activities like buying a soda, sitting in the car with a friend, and taking their family to buy a new puppy. In 2021, a teenager named Antonio Reyes was arrested for the murder of Luis Davalos, who was killed in June of 2020. He was charged in connection with the other 5 known victims in February of 2025. While awaiting trial in the Davalos case, prosecutors believe the killings were random and do not believe that Reyes had any prior connections with the victims or any specific reasons to want them dead. He's facing 6 counts of murder and 4 counts of attempted murder, and is also accused of trying to kill his cellmate with a shank. The new charges against Reyes came after police connected him to the suspected murder weapon. Investigators also found important evidence by examining his social media footprint, and the detectives who worked the case are being lauded for their tireless efforts to deliver justice to the victims and their families, but their work may not be done, according to authorities who have conceded that there may be more victims that they don't know about. Number 8. Kamyjah Bias. On November 17, 2021, Pierre V. Scott Jr. was stabbed to death outside Lampierre High School in Illinois, where he attended classes as a senior and was just months away from graduating. The murder was committed by an underclassman named Kamyjah Bias, who infamously acted out during her court proceedings following her arrest for first-degree murder and other charges, including the attempted murder of another Lampierre student named Daquan R. Dunn. Bias was tried as an adult after the prosecutor fought to get the case moved out of juvenile court. She left her fate in the hands of the judge and was found guilty following a bench trial in February of 2023. 2 months later, the teen received multiple sentences amounting to a 40-year prison term, including 30 years for first-degree murder, 10 years for attempted murder, and 3 years for unlawful use of a weapon. Under the terms of the sentence, Bias would become eligible for parole after serving 20 years and would only be required to serve a portion of her sentences for the attempted murder and weapon counts. She could have been sentenced to up to 90 years behind bars, but was nevertheless unsatisfied by the much more lenient term she was given. During the hearing, Bias interrupted Scott's mother during her victim impact statement by pounding on the defense table and overturning a podium. She was removed from the courtroom before being led back in under heightened security and a stern warning that she would be removed again if she continued to act out. Bias may now be facing an even lighter sentence following a 2024 appellate court ruling that her case should have never been tried in adult court. The court determined that prosecutors had failed to provide the evidence necessary to try Bias as an adult, and the case was ordered back to juvenile court, where the proceedings will essentially start over from scratch. Prosecutors will have an opportunity to fight for the case to be sent back to an adult court, and that decision will be made by a new judge who did not preside over the previous trial. Number 7. Jaylon Sturdivant. 19-year-old Madison Wilfong's life was abruptly cut short in August of 2022 when he was fatally shot on a Jonesboro, Arkansas street by a young man named Jaylon Sturdivant. Court documents state that Wilfong and a friend had just delivered marijuana to a nearby residence when they noticed that the customer had paid them with a counterfeit $100 bill. Wilfong returned to the home with 3 of his friends and confronted the buyers, which included Sturdivant. As one of Wilfong's friends tried forcing their way inside, Sturdivant commanded them to leave and threatened to shoot them. According to police, Wilfong and his friends heeded Sturdivant's warning and began running away from the scene, but he shot them anyway. Wilfong died from his injuries, and witnesses identified Sturdivant as the shooter, resulting in his arrest on suspicion of murder. In 2024, Sturdivant pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and aggravated assault. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison for the murder charge plus a 16-year suspended imposition, the latter of which is typically served on probation. Records show that he's serving his time at a minimum security facility and will become eligible for parole in 2027, roughly 3 years into his sentence. Number 6. Ryan Watson. A Florida teenager named Daniel Rodriguez Lopez was shot dead on February 4th, 2023 during what was supposed to be a fun day at the DeSoto County Fair. 4 days later, the Arcadia police announced the arrest of the suspected killer, Ryan Watson, who was 2 years younger than the victim. The victim's mother reportedly told police that her son had been having issues with fellow students at his school, including Watson, who was an accused gang member. A fight broke out between the 2 teens in front of hundreds of onlookers, during which Watson pulled a gun and shot Lopez. In December 2024, Watson was convicted of second-degree murder and a gun charge. The judge sentenced him to life, but due to his age at the time of the shooting, his case will be reviewed for possible resentencing after 25 years. Watson remained emotionless even as his mother tearfully apologized to Lopez's family, as well as when the judge stated that he believed the defendant was intent on killing on the day of the murder. He described Watson as an extreme public safety threat and the teen's actions as egregious, making it clear that he believes the convicted killer is exactly where he belongs. Number 5. Benny Castizo. On March 15, 2024, 18-year-old Benny Castizo killed fellow teen Christian Guthrie in a gang-related shooting in Ellensburg, Washington. Guthrie was unarmed when he was shot twice in the chest in broad daylight while exiting an SUV in a Jack-in-the-Box parking lot. He died from his injuries, and Castizo was arrested 5 months later on suspicion of first-degree murder, second-degree assault, and reckless endangerment. According to prosecutors, Guthrie was a member of the ABK street gang, while Castizo was associated with a rival gang called the South Side Players. During the 10-day trial in Catitas County, which took place in February of 2025, a witness who was waiting in the fast food restaurant's drive-thru at the time of the shooting testified about what he witnessed. Peter Weisbeck had stopped at the Jack-in-the-Box for lunch while running errands. As he pulled into the parking lot, he noticed Guthrie's SUV parked at an angle. He saw someone approaching the vehicle in a normal fashion, but realized that this was no ordinary interaction when he saw the same individual put his hands up in an apparent display of surrender. Just when it looked like the person was about to walk away, however, he turned back toward the SUV, pulled a gun out of his waistband, and began shooting. Weisbeck described the ordeal as quick and recalled seeing Castizo calmly walking away after hearing a series of pops. A few minutes later, Guthrie was seen clutching his chest while saying that someone had just shot him. His tone of voice was normal, but he was visibly distressed, prompting Weisbeck to dial 911 before leaving the property. Following the trial, Castizo was convicted of murder, assault, and reckless endangerment. He's currently awaiting sentencing and could face life in prison. Number 4. Kaeden Farish. In October 2024, 19-year-old Kaeden Farish of Azle, Texas, became the first person in Tarrant County to be convicted of murder for dealing the deadly drug fentanyl. He was charged with the crime following the death of 17-year-old Dustin Anderson, who accidentally overdosed in January of 2024 after taking fentanyl-laced pills that he had purchased from Farish. 10 months after Anderson's passing, Farish pleaded guilty to the charge and was sentenced to 19 years in prison. The decision to charge Farish with murder came just months after a new law went into effect, which allows prosecutors to hold illicit drug makers and dealers accountable for the deaths that their products cause. Lawmakers passed the policy in hopes that it will deter people from selling fentanyl and lead to a lower number of deaths from the highly potent synthetic opioid, which is known to kill users in minuscule amounts. And while the threshold for proving a fentanyl-related murder is much higher than that of a standard drug dealing charge, Prosecutors seem to believe it'll be worth the extra investigative work and man-hours that will go into securing convictions against the accused. Much like other parts of the U.S., rural Texas was plagued by the opioid epidemic, with fentanyl-related deaths multiplying exponentially over a 10-year period. It's too soon to tell whether the new law is having this intended effect, but the data suggests that these fatalities are gradually declining. Number 3. Sallie Gilmer and Isaac Honigschmidt. Late one afternoon in October of 2022, police responded to a reported stabbing at a Lincoln, Nebraska apartment complex where they found the murdered body of 70-year-old Jesse Gilmer Jr. Gilmer's teenage daughter Sallie told officers that she had discovered the bloody scene upon arriving home from school, but she eventually admitted that she and her boyfriend, Isaac Honigschmidt, had killed her dad. The young couple had started planning Gilmer's murder about a week earlier due to Sallie's stress over her parents fighting and her father's alleged mental abuse. According to court documents, Honigschmidt picked Sallie up from school during the day, provided her with a knife that was used to kill Jesse, drove her to her home to commit the murder, then took her back to school. They returned to the apartment once again a short while later, at which point Sallie dialed 911. Sallie was charged as an adult with first-degree murder and use of a deadly weapon to commit a felony, while Honigschmidt, who was also charged as an adult, faced a lesser charge of aiding and abetting first-degree murder. In November of 2024, Sallie pleaded guilty to a reduced second-degree murder charge. Prosecutors dropped the weapon charge and Sallie was sentenced to 40 to 60 years in prison. She's scheduled to be released in October of 2052 at the age of 45. In January of 2025, Honigschmidt pleaded no contest to one count each of aiding and abetting the use of a deadly weapon to commit a felony and tampering with evidence. He was sentenced to 20 to 30 years in prison with the possibility of parole starting in 2032. Prison records list the projected release date of October 2037, at which time Honigschmidt will be 31 years old. Today's topic was requested by Berry Straw 333. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comment section below. Number 2. The murder of Lesley Luna Pantaleon. 17-year-old Lesley Luna Pantaleon was reported missing in Montgomery, Alabama, by her parents on June 24th of 2020 after she was last seen driving in her blue Chevy Blazer the previous day. Roughly 10 days later, a civilian discovered her body in a local creek. Pantaleon's remains were too damaged and decomposed for a cause of death to be determined, but her manner of death was ruled a homicide. Investigators traced the crime to 3 of the victim's peers, Tanaya Merriweather, Erin Taylor, and Taisha Wisenant, along with a male suspect named Keontae Davidson. According to prosecutors, Pantaleon had become entangled in a beef with the defendants after hearing that Wisenant's household had something to do with the theft of her gun days before the murder. She supposedly put a hit out on Wisenant's address and then went there to get her gun back. During the confrontation that ensued, Pantaleon and Wisenant got into a physical fight. Wisenant and her co-defendants then forced Pantaleon into her own vehicle and drove it into a wooded area where they beat her with a metal gate pole and stabbed her with a knife. They left Pantaleon clinging to life along a roadside before returning to the site with another female suspect later that day and dumping the victim in the creek where she was later found. One of the defendants later told police that Pantaleon's feet were moving and it looked like she was trying to swim after she was thrown into the water. Instead of having any second thoughts and trying to save the victim, however, the girls went to McDonald's and had smoothies at 6 o'clock in the morning. Merriweather, Taylor, Wisenant, and Davidson were initially charged with capital murder. Erin Taylor pleaded guilty to a reduced murder charge in 2024 and was sentenced to 50 years in prison. She'll be 67 years old when she's released from prison in 2070. Keontae Davidson also pleaded guilty to murder and was sentenced to life behind bars. While records show that he could be reconsidered for parole at an earlier time, he will remain in prison until he's at least 88 years old. As things currently stand, Taisha Wisenant is serving a 50-year sentence for murder, while Tanaya Merriweather's case has yet to go to trial. Number 1. Caishen Willis. 18-year-old Devorius Mack was fatally shot in early March of 2025 during a robbery gone wrong in Horry County, South Carolina. He died from his injuries after arriving at a hospital just before midnight, and the accused killer, 17-year-old Caishen Charles Willis, was detained at the scene. Willis has since been arrested on suspicion of murder, armed robbery, 2 counts of attempted murder, and possession of a weapon during a violent crime. He remains held without bail at the Horry County Jail as the case works its way through the court system. Authorities have released few details about the circumstances leading up to the shooting, including whether the suspect and victim knew each other or what caused the accused killer's deadly decision to pull the trigger. Thanks for watching. Hypothetically speaking, would you agree to spend your years between 16 and 30 in prison if it meant never having to work again for the rest of your life after your release? And why or why not? Let us know in the comments section below.